I've heard you talk a lot about the theology of a woman's body. True, I tend to do that. What is the theology of a man's body? Very good question. And you can't really look at one without looking at the other, so we have to just revisit briefly what I've said in other videos about the theology of a woman's body. Then we can understand more clearly the theology of a man's body, right? When we look at the mystery of the incarnation, of this young Jewish woman who said yes to conceive God's Son within her, we discover, if Christmas is real, we discover that a woman's body has become heaven on earth. That's the theology of a woman's body. You can check out the video in the description below where I say much more about that. But if that's the theology of a woman's body, heaven on earth, what's the theology of a man's body? Guys, have you ever wondered standing there in the shower, why, oh God, did you make me this way? How do we even put this without like falling back into the gutter, right? So many of us, we first learned about the mystery of sexuality in a locker room, or from pornography, or from an older brother who just warped our brains. My brothers, come up and come out. Come into the light. As Christ says, he says, make sure that every part of your body comes into the light and no part of it remains in darkness. For if your body and every part of it comes into the light, he says, then your body will be illuminated like a burning lamp. And through that illumination, you, my brothers, and I, as a man, we will discover who we really are. What is the theology of our body? If a woman's body is heaven on earth, then the theology of our body is that we are designed by God to enter the gates of heaven. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. What are we looking for in woman, right? We spend the first 9 months of our existence trying to get outside of her, and then we spend, it seems, the rest of our lives trying to get back in. Well, what do we sense is in there? At the deepest level, at the deepest, most beautiful theological level, I think what we intuit, whether we could ever put this in words or not, we know because we know that there's something in woman we're looking for, and indeed there is God himself. Woman's body has become the portal between heaven and earth. This is where God enters, and this is where we encounter him. It is a basic bedrock principle of Catholic theology, of Christian theology itself. God enters the world through woman. And we intuit, men, that we will find him there. But we've come to believe God doesn't want to grant us the desire of our heart. We've come to believe this lie that God doesn't want to grant us the satisfaction of that cry. And so we go over to the enemy who says, come over here, little buddy, and I'll show you what you want. And we embrace a pornified vision of woman rather than a glorified vision of woman. Pay attention, my brothers, to the deepest cry of your heart. It's not merely for some momentary gratification or satisfaction. It's to learn the ways of love. It's to encounter the divine. And we rightly intuit that woman can teach us this mystery, and our bodies themselves are a call to enter in and discover these mysteries. But we can only really discover the mystery of the theology of our own bodies if we are willing to bleed. And I mean, bleed right where it hurts. If we are to understand the theology of a man's body, we have to go back to the Old Testament and to the sign of the Old Covenant. I'm not making this up. It's right in the Bible. We don't like to think about it, but it's right there, and we got to think about it. Circumcision, right? What is going on here? Why is this the sign of the old covenant? It seems to me God is trying to teach the man something the woman already knows. What does the woman already know? She already knows that in this whole sexual equation of bringing life into the world, it's going to cost her the sacrifice of her flesh and the shedding of blood. She bleeds every month as a reminder of this. The man in this fallen world is often tempted to have his pleasure and then say, see ya, and go his merry way. What was the promise given to Abraham? Offspring, 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 more numerous than the stars. And then the sign of this promise, the sign of this covenant, I want to inscribe a sign, God says, of this covenant, of this promise in your flesh. And you can imagine Abraham. Yeah, great. God, what do you have in mind? Like a tattoo on the shoulder, a bone through the nose? What are we thinking here? And God says, in so many words, Abraham, see that sharp rock over there? Here's what I want you to do with it. Yep, that dangly little flesh at the end of your loins, cut it off. What? Yep, you and all your male offspring and the whole world will know you are my chosen people. What is going on here? The man is needing to learn the hard way that if he is to image God's fatherhood, which is also the theology of a man's body, you've heard me say in other videos, and if you haven't, it may be a little bit of a surprise to you, but here we go. The very word testicles, do you know where we get that word? Shares the same root as words like testify, testimony, testament. The very purpose of our testicles, gentlemen, is to testify to the eternal fatherhood of God, right? Check this out, right? Here we go. Look at this image. In every act of intercourse, one egg, typically, unless there's, right, double ovulation, but typically one egg, and typically in a healthy man, upwards of 500 million sperm racing to get to that egg. You know what Pope Benedict XVI says about the plenitude of sperm in the world? He was talking about pollen specifically here, but we can also apply it to the act of human intercourse, right? Pollen everywhere, which is plant sperm, right? 500 million sperm racing to get to one egg. Why? Pope Benedict XVI suggests this is a sign of the infinitude of God's fatherhood, right? Our bodies are meant to tell that story. The infinity of God's fatherhood, the self-sacrificial nature of God's fatherhood. But here's the problem. Again, that temptation to plant our seed, have our pleasure, and go our merry way. Circumcision is the sign from God saying, if you want to testify truly to my fatherhood, if you want to live the true theology of your body as a man and testify to my fatherhood, it's going to demand the sacrifice of flesh and the shedding of blood right where it hurts. Now we know that in the New Testament, the circumcision of the flesh becomes the circumcision of the heart, which we receive in baptism. So the circumcision of the flesh is not required in the Christian understanding of things, but an understanding of it is required for us to be the men we're called to be. And I want you to take a look at this image here. Christ, the true male, the absolute revelation of the truth of what it means to be a man is right here on the cross. And this is a reality in Christian art that you probably never heard of. Very few people talk about it, but it's there. Look at the flow of blood from his heart and trace it down. Where does it go? It goes down to his loins. And the artist here is making a very specific point to connect the circumcision of the heart with the circumcision of his flesh. Scripture is very clear. There is no redemption for us without Christ's shedding blood. Well, where did Christ first shed his blood for us? It was on the 8th day after his birth when he was circumcised. We don't like to think about it. We don't like to talk about it. We shrink from this, but it is absolutely fundamentally true that the blood of our Redeemer comes first from his loins. Let us learn from this how to live the true theology of our bodies as men. What we learn here is that in the sexual reality, the agony and the ecstasy go together. If we're just grasping at the ecstasy and saying no to the agony, then we have forgotten that circumcision mystery of the theology of our bodies. It's going to cost us. We have to learn what it means to say, this is my body given for you. This is my blood shed for you. Keeping that agony and ecstasy together is how we truly testify in our very bodies to the eternal fatherhood of God, thus living the theology of a man's body.